Shocked, Black Witch asked for clarification, unable to believe that he had asked them to wait 5 days. Teo confirmed that he had spoken correctly and stated that it wasn't a joke. There was silence in the room as everyone pondered the information they had received. The Black Witch expressed disbelief. She reminded him that it had taken years to clear up to the 10th floor, though they had managed to clear the 11th floor in less than an hour. She wondered if his excitement had clouded his judgment. Teo bowed to the Black Witch and looked at her pleadingly, reminding her that he had cleared the 10th floor and shared the rewards and results with everyone. He emphasized that developing the 11th floor and locating the monster boss had benefited everyone. He felt he had the right to ask them for this favor. He asked them to wait only 5 days, regardless of whether or not he would climb to the 20th floor. At this moment, a message appeared in front of Teo, informing him that he had successfully made it to the 11th floor, ranking first. He was promised a reward that included rewards from the Goddess of Protection and the Demon King. Teo pondered the situation and realized that the Demon King seemed to have panicked since they weren't fighting amongst themselves. A series of messages appeared, suggesting that the Demon King wanted him to accept the reward, hinting at refusing to accept the rewards at all, acting suspiciously, encouraging him to make a decision, and expressing bewilderment at his thoughts. The investigator confidently stated that Teo had shared the information with them about the raid on the 11th floor. In return, he asked them to listen to one of his requests and promised to fulfill it unless it proved impossible. It might prove difficult during a 5-day wait, but this request was not impossible. The Black Witch recognized that the request was not impossible, but before she could say anything, the investigator reminded her that a promise is a promise. Reluctantly, the Black Witch sighed and agreed to the request. The other members of the club also expressed their agreement. The leader, not fully understanding Teo's intentions, but still agreed. The Countess agreed, suspecting that Teo had some sort of plan. The knight promised to take no action for 5 days. However, the Sword Saint took a different view, explaining that he had only made one promise to Teo, to watch him for 5 days. The Sword Saint clarified that he was not obligated to fulfill the other requests. If Teo decided to go up to the 20th floor, he would follow him according to their original agreement. Teo acknowledged the Sword Saint's decision and expressed his relief that he supported it. Teo thanked everyone for agreeing to his request and began to say goodbye, saying that he would see them in 5 days. Opening the door, Spirit noticed that none of the soldiers were moving. Teo explained that this was because the quest had not yet begun. Perplexed, Spirit asked about the quest, wanting clarification. Teo explained that no one had chosen a role in the Empire, and as a result, there was no Chancellor or Captain of the Order of Chivalry. The hunters were originally supposed to complete a quest from the 12th to the 20th floor. The quest was to be obtained the moment once they entered the stage of the 11th floor, following the correct order. However, they had already entered the 12th floor some time ago, and the quest had not been received. He emphasized that they needed to choose their roles before starting the quest. Without choosing roles, the Demon King's invasion would not start, and the Empire would not have to face this invasion. However, Teo posed a hypothetical scenario to the Sword Emperor, asking what would happen if he killed the Demon King in their current state. He assumed that if he destroyed the boss monster before the quest even began, no one would be obliged to choose the reward, and there would be no need to fight traitors or trickery. While Teo was pondering this, a message appeared in front of him that the Demon King was furious. Suddenly, a portal appeared in the sky and black rain poured down from it. The Demon King appeared from the portal and spoke in an eerie voice, chastising Teo for his insolence. The king urged him to follow the established order and deemed it impertinent for him to come without making a choice. Teo smirked in response to the king's confusion and stated that he had already made his choice. He pointed his sword at the Demon King with a confident smile, explaining that he had decided to kill him before the quest even began. This way, he would not allow the Demon King to harm the hunters or people in the Empire, and the traitors would have nothing to worry about. Smiling calmly, Teo revealed that he prefers happy endings and doesn't like bad ones. He felt that killing the Demon King before he was harmed was the best solution. He reasoned that the Demon King's interference would prevent him from reaching a happy ending. Enraged, the Demon King countered that he was trying to stop him without the Empire's help. In response, Teo raised his sword and dismissed the idea that he needed help, saying that warriors often fight alone. Gaining his resolve, he launched an attack on the Demon King. In the frozen world, with only his sword resembling a needle on a clock, the eternal 5 days began. It approached the frog and ate it, leaving only the frog. The black entity disappeared, wanting to experience more life. The Demon King swung his sword at Teo, and Teo received a message that he was dead. In response, Teo drew a black line on his hand. As he prepared for battle, the spirit informed him that the Demon King's sword technique was not exceptional and relied mainly on brute force. However, the power was still frightening. Teo realized that if he knew the direction of the Demon King's attacks, he would be able to dodge them. He received another message of his death and drew a second line on his hand. Despite dying multiple times, Teo continued to fight, constantly drawing lines on his hand. Captive to time, Teo pondered the implications of the search continuing as usual. He wondered how many soldiers would die on a battlefield that seemed to be flooded with torrents of violence. The death of each soldier meant the loss of at least 20 years of life. If 20 soldiers fell, it meant a loss of 200 years, and 100 deaths equaled 2,000 years. Teo decided not to take on any roles to save those potentially lost years, but he knew he needed to brace his heart for eternal confinement. The spirit expressed doubt that Teo would be able to dodge the attacks, even knowing their direction. Annoyed, Teo asked for silence. Once again, he received a message stating that he was dead. During the battle, the spirit noticed that he still lacked experience in using his aura and needed to balance its flow throughout his body. Teo voiced his displeasure but received another message about his death. The Demon King stood before him, expressing his outrage at the warrior's actions and the arrogance he felt was coming from the Empire. Unable to calm down, Teo attacked and announced that they would start with a strike today as well. Confused, the Demon King doubted his words. Teo struck the Demon King and announced that the warrior had slain the Demon King. However, he received a message that he was dead. Smiling and holding his sword, Teo boldly taunted the Demon King, proclaiming himself the sword of the Empire. Teo swung his weapon and challenged him to prove his words. Teo accepted the challenge and received another message telling him he was dead. Despite the many deaths, Teo continued to fight the Demon King relentlessly. In his thoughts, he realized that his sword was the only needle on the clock, and in order for a second to pass in the world, his sword had to move. He realized that even though it only moved for a second, the world could breathe once more because of that second. He compared his existence to a drop of water that must flow no matter what, even if it meant eternal life. Teo lived his life. He imagined that the Black Witch smiled at him and praised him for clearing the floor in less than an hour, losing less than 40 people. He drew another line on his wrist. The Black Witch looked at him cheerfully and praised him for clearing the scene in less than 50 minutes, specifically noting his offer to join forces with the soldiers. She noted that less than 30 hunters had died. He drew another line on his wrist. The Black Witch exclaimed that they had massacred him in less than 40 minutes, with less than 20 hunters killed. She marveled at this accomplishment on such a treacherous battlefield. In anger, the Demon King asked Teo if death brought him happiness. He calmly replied that he felt happy, and said that the Demon King would not understand him, nor would anyone else. The Demon King prepared to swing his huge sword, calling him arrogant. Teo simply said he was a simple man. The Demon King called him pathetic, and Teo received another message that he was dead. However, he didn't give up because he saw no reason to do so. He believed that his sword, the Black Witch, caught Teo's hand and confirmed in a whisper that not a single person had died. She tearfully thanked him. The Demon King looked at Teo and asked angrily how he dared to stop him alone. Teo pointed his sword at the Demon King, reminding him that warriors fight alone. The Demon King attacked, claiming that his shadows were made up of Teo's uncleanness. Teo prepared to repel the attack, but suddenly a mirror appeared in the sky, blocking the Demon King's strike. When he turned around, he saw the Black Witch there. She apologized for not complying with his request and admitted that she was getting impatient and decided to follow him. Teo jokingly remarked that he was trying to portray himself as a warrior, but it was incredibly cool. The Black Witch seconded his words, summoning her mirrors and expressing her intention to join the fight. Teo playfully remarked that she might steal his kill when he was almost done. The Black Witch objected, stating that stealing someone's kill was the best feeling in the world. They both agreed and started laughing together, enjoying the exciting battle. The Demon King looked at Teo with disdain, calling them bastards. Teo apologized. He expressed his desire to fight the Demon King alone, but he realized that warriors always fought in groups. He suggested to the Demon King to leave it as it was. That was the tradition. In response, the Demon King accused him of trying to take over the heavens with small ones and said that he would no longer engage in sword combat. He summoned monsters such as goblins, causing surprise and worry to the Black Witch, who realized that she couldn't handle the situation on her own. The Black Witch urgently called for the Sword Saint's help, expressing her frustration. The Sword Saint explained that they had been fighting the monster boss for less than 30 seconds and were going to observe for a little longer before intervening. Teo agreed, saying that he planned to hold out for another minute and then ask for help. The Black Witch desperately insisted that Teo and the Sword Saint grab her hand so they could get out of this situation. However, Teo smiled and refused, raising his hand and activating the skill. The Demon King asked in shock what he was doing. Dark energy flowed around Teo and a message appeared, signifying the activation of the skill. The entity slowly increased in size. Each new body brought her a new kind of happiness. Even killing brought her pleasure. Suddenly, he came upon a little girl who was running for help, desperately crying out for her father and anyone else in the vicinity. The predatory creature, driven by instincts, stalked its prey, attracted by the girl's scent. It devoured her with an almost bewitching fervor, absorbing her memories, devouring everything in its path, leaving nothing behind. But after a few moments, the girl stood up again. At that moment, her father's voice came out. He turned to her, expressed his concern, and scolded her for daring to go out alone. He mentioned her poor health and questioned her ragged clothes. Smiling, the girl assured her father that she felt better now. It was the first name the Demon King had received. Teo, surrounded by dark energy, activated his summoning 100 souls skill, causing many skeletons made of earth to appear from the ground. He then turned to the spirit, explaining his reasons for choosing this skill. The spirit asked why Teo had chosen this skill, to which Teo replied that he had originally been attracted by the potential of creating a huge light as a Demon King. However, his views had changed since then. Teo opened the skill card and found the skill information. It was an SS rank skill that allowed him to summon the people he killed as monsters. The summoned creatures did not retain their original skills and memories, only appearing as creatures such as goblins, orcs, zombies, and skeletons. However, they could only be summoned once a week. He posed a question to Spirit, asking how many people he thought Teo had killed. Upon reflection, Spirit guessed the Flame Emperor and Teo himself, which was 2. He confirmed that the guess was correct. He smiled confidently and wondered why Sword Saint's detective's insight showed 4,000 and suggested that the tower calculated the number of kills differently. The Black Witch, amazed by the multitude of skeletons, asked if that was Teo's skill. He confirmed her suspicions, explaining that his skill allowed him to summon thousands of monsters. The Black Witch realized that was how Teo was able to clear the 10th floor single-handedly. Curious that Teo possessed the same skill as the Demon King confronted him. Teo, unsettled, refused to reveal the reason, causing the Demon King to become resentful and vengeful, believing that the goddess had betrayed him. Teo turned to the Sword Saint again for help, asking him to fight the skeletons, assuring him that they would not be easily pushed back. Reluctantly, the Sword Saint agreed, expressing his preference to fight the monsters rather than him. Then Teo turned to the leader of the Black Dragons and asked for her help in confronting the Demon King. The Black Witch agreed, emphasizing that he should not interfere with her during the battle. Teo resolutely raised his sword, ordering the 100 souls to demonstrate their skill. The army of skeletons rushed forward, fighting the Demon King's troops. Even if the skeleton's head was destroyed, they would relentlessly rise again and continue their relentless onslaught. Watching the persistence of the skeletons, the spirit expressed both awe and fear, wondering who these skeletons were. He marveled at their unwavering determination, an army of monsters unafraid of death. Enraged, the Demon King faced Teo, looking incredulous at how a man from another world could stand up to him. He questioned how he, devoid of evil intentions, grudges, or interest in this world, dared to stand in his way. Teo pointed his sword at the Demon King, brushing aside the question of his background. He stated that he was present here at this moment, and if the Demon King questioned his qualifications, he should stop talking. At that moment, a message appeared, announcing that the tower had bestowed a nickname on Teo. It read, Lord of Death. Emboldened by Tower's recognition, Teo launched a fierce attack on the Demon King, saying that Tower had proven his qualifications. Another message appeared praising the sovereign reaping death. This item remained timeless, becoming more beautiful every day. Its captivating fragrance enchanted many who encountered it. People called it the Saint of the Borderland. A mother with a newborn baby in her arms approached the girl, desperately asking for her help. She believed that the girl had the power to heal any illness and begged her to show mercy and bless the child who was suffering from a fatal illness. The girl, adhering to a certain rule, told the mother to leave the child and return at dawn the next day. The mother entrusted her child to her, bowing before her and expressing her trust in the saint. She took the crying child in her arms and noticed how fragile the desperate love of a human being is. She noted that the mother had chosen rags to cover the child, emphasizing that even in the midst of hardship, life can be beautiful. She assured the child that he or she would no longer experience pain, proclaiming that happiness exists in the world because of this wonderful person. As she consumed the child's flesh and bones, their memories were infused into her. Many brought their children to her, wanting the same treatment. When she returned the healthy child to the mother, she comforted her, saying that the child would grow stronger and would not be sick often. Overjoyed, the mother thanked her, addressing her as a saint. Many people stood in front of the girl, praising her as a worker of miracles. They thanked her for helping them walk again, restoring their health and giving them sight. They welcomed her as their savior and were grateful for her presence. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a man was examining a scroll and wondering if the peasants had fled in groups to join the Holy One who saves. The warlord led a group of soldiers, lamenting the goddess's declining authority and urging his soldiers to take action against the cultists. They were ordered to show no mercy to the witch's followers and to burn down her base. The soldiers obeyed the commander's order, setting fire to everything around them and carrying out ruthless murders. She watched the massacre of her followers in shock, which fueled her anger. She shouted at those who dehumanized their brethren, condemning their evil hearts and calling them to their final destruction. Teo engaged in a fierce battle with the Demon King, trying to anticipate his next move. He pondered whether to attack from the left or the right side. Suddenly, a message appeared in front of him, announcing his death. Unsettled, Teo contemplated his left side as another message suddenly appeared, informing him that he would return to the point 24 hours before. The message also stated that he would have to wait 6 days and 23 hours before he could use the call of 100 souls again. When using the clockwork, Death Sovereign's memories and stats will remain, including skills. Just as the Sword Emperor shared his memories, his abilities and action times will remain the same. After receiving the message of his death and subsequent return, Teo continued to fight and died repeatedly until the 100 souls summon expired. In desperation, the Demon King confronted Teo, calling him a simple man and asking if he possessed the Eye of Prophecy. Teo simply replied, something like that. He then received a message that he could now use the 100 souls calling. After activating the skill, numerous skeletons materialized, shocking the Demon King. The skeletons fought against the Demon King's army while Teo launched an attack on the Demon King himself. The spirit expressed admiration for Teo's persistence and suggested that he try to repeat the challenge in the future. Teo brushed the idea aside, urging the spirit to focus on the current battle. While he blocked the attack, Spirit continued to speculate on the consequences of repeated challenges. Before their conversation could develop further, however, another message arrived. Teo, annoyed by the situation, expressed his displeasure to the spirit, blaming him for having to repeat the process for another week. Spirit, smiling smugly, replied that he should blame his own weakness, not blame. After receiving a message counting down the time until he could use the 100 souls appeal again, he vowed to beat Spirit one day. The sword spirit laughed. He reminded Teo that he was already dead and could not be defeated. As Teo prepared to confront the Demon King, the spirit convinced him to defeat the Demon King as soon as possible, boasting that he had overcome the 20th floor alone even without skills. Teo instructed the Black Witch that the Demon King would be approaching from the right. The Black Witch summoned her mirrors and lined them up into a star shape. She combined their power into one and unleashed a powerful attack on the Demon King, causing a massive explosion that tore his body apart. Teo praised the Black Witch for her excellent strike. The Demon King's body began to regenerate. Teo anticipated the next move and shouted to the Black Dragon leader that the Demon King would come from the left. He then told the Sword Saint to dodge to the left, planning to attack as soon as the Demon King's body became vulnerable. Following Teo's instructions, the Black Witch attacked again with her mirrors and blasted the Demon King's body. Disappointed, the Demon King tried to recover. Teo was stunned to see the Demon King's skin hiding underneath the dark liquid body. Suddenly, a message appeared, stating that the Demon King had decided to retreat. Teo exclaimed in shock, surprised at the sudden turn of events. Another message followed, saying that the Demon King had retreated to the 13th floor. Teo couldn't believe that the boss monster had escaped just as he was about to defeat him. The Demon King assured him that he would be back. Enraged, Teo yelled at the Demon King, calling him a bastard. Before their eyes, the Demon King disappeared from the 12th floor. Teo thought about the purpose of his efforts and ran his hand over his face in frustration. Reports surfaced that the tower had realized his decision and was setting up a hidden quest. It also said that the quests on floors 12 through 19 would be revised. Teo was shocked to discover that the quest could be revised. The new quest was titled Warrior of the World Where Time Stopped. The purpose of the quest was to deal with one's heart by resolving to not let a single person die. It asserted that justice and loyalty remain meaningful even in a world where time has stopped. The message also stated that the Demon King had been injured and had not traveled far, giving Teo the opportunity to pursue him. A bright glow enveloped the space, and there were reports that the Demon King could not be found on the 12th floor and that his retreat was confirmed. The Black Witch was shocked by this discovery. She turned to Teo, demanding an explanation of what was happening. Teo admitted that this was also a first for him, and even the spirit was unfamiliar with the situation. Teo then directed his attention to the castle and noticed that the number of flags on the castle walls had greatly diminished. The Black Witch agreed with his observation and grabbed his hand, urging him to hold on to it as they needed to investigate further. He agreed, and the Black Witch used her teleportation skill, transportation to the top of the fortress walls. There they witnessed an amazing transformation. The once gloomy and dreary city turned bright and shining. He realized that history had changed. The Demon King's invasion of the Empire, which had been recorded in history, had now become non-existent in this world. A message appeared saying that the quests on the 11th and 12th floors would be revised due to the history change. Teo thought about the unseen forces that caused the story change and realized that it was due to his actions. However, the commander of the castle walls noticed him and shouted at him, demanding to know who they were and reprimanding him for daring to set foot in their castle. Teo recognized the commander and addressed him, which surprised the commander, and he asked how he knew who he was. In his thoughts, Teo understood why the commander, who was a friendly soldier on the 11th floor, was treating him like an outsider. All of a sudden, Teo suddenly burst into loud laughter, shocking both the commander and the Black Witch. Even the sword spirit was stunned. However, he continued to laugh. Smiling, he looked forward and shouted, expressing his pride and joy. He declared that he had protected the Empire and fulfilled his promise without shame or regret. He was proud of himself, knowing that he had accomplished what he had set out to do. After reflecting on his past, he realized that he had lived a wasted life filled with envy, ridicule, and aimless drinking. He used the coldness of the world as an excuse to harden his heart and throw away his own life. But now he stood proudly, even if the entire world looked up to the Black Dragon and the Sword Saint Chieftain. He was proud of his accomplishments. A series of messages appeared, announcing that the stage had been cleared and reporting the completion of the 12th floor. The number of raiders was counted, and it turned out that there were only 3 of them. The raid contribution rankings were shown, with Teo ranking first, Black Witch ranking second, and the Sword Saint ranking third. Confused, the commander looked at him and asked what he was talking about. Teo waved him off happily and charged him with the care of the Empire. He apologized that his role as a warrior was over and emphasized that defeating the Demon King was his end. Recognizing that there were still areas in the Empire that needed improvement, he expressed his faith in their ability to continue and wished them well. In response to his cheerful demeanor, Spirit began to laugh and remarked on his unpredictable nature. Teo smiled and admitted that he couldn't help it, jokingly stating that he was too beautiful that day. The spirit joined in the laughter, appreciating his refusal to act like a loser. Teo then turned to the Black Witch, urging her to come up to the 13th floor with him. However, she looked at him with disappointed eyes and remarked that there were no normal people among the high-ranking hunters. Teo was stunned by her statement and asked for clarification, but she grabbed his arm and initiated the teleportation. Teo, Black Witch, and the Sword Saint stood side by side, preparing to move forward. The Sword Saint instructed Teo that the right to enter first always belonged to him. He asked him, representing them, to use the pass command to keep moving. Teo said, "Transmitting," and they were instantly transported to the 13th floor. When they arrived on the 13th floor, a message appeared informing him of the teleportation and welcomed him. The Demon King stood before them, furious, and shouted at them for daring to take away the children he had spared and sheltered. He accused them of mocking him and expressed his intention to curse them. The Sword Saint and Black Witch were stunned by the terrifying scream and were perplexed as to what could have caused such a reaction from the Demon King. Meanwhile, Teo prepared for battle, and the spirit, shocked, looked at the Demon King and questioned his current condition, noticing that he looked weaker. Teo was puzzled by this remark. The Sword Spirit explained that his weakened strength seemed to be more than just the result of an injury. It was as if his level had dropped, comparing him to a lower version of himself rather than the powerful SS rank king he should have been on the 12th floor. The Demon King now seemed closer in strength to the Goblin King they had defeated on the 5th floor with minimal effort. This turn of events was unexpected, since boss monsters were supposed to get stronger as they climbed the tower. The spirit wondered if breaking the witch's aura was having the effect of lowering her level. Amidst these thoughts, a series of posts appeared, counting the rewards and saying that they cannot be fully tallied until the 19th floor is cleared. However, an unofficial reward could be given out now. In addition, all maps from the 11th to the 20th floor had been opened. Teo, shocked by the world map and the unfolding events, exclaimed that he had realized something important. He spoke up, explaining why the Demon King was behaving the way he was. He asked the Black Dragon leader to review the previous stage, where the story of the Demon King's invasion of the capital and the existence of the refugee camp had come to a complete halt. He noted that the refugees must have fled either from the Empire or another part of the world, but the camp had completely disappeared. The Black Witch realized and added that not only had the history of the Empire's invasion changed, but also the history of the invasion of the entire world. Teo continued, stating that they had returned to an era when the Demon King had not yet invaded the continent. It was during that time that the temple was attacked. He asked the spirit about the Demon King's level decrease. The spirit was confused at first, but Teo explained that the voice informing the hunters of their level increase also mentioned their existence. It seems that the growth of the boss monster was due to the killing and hunting that has now ceased, causing it to fade away. A message appeared indicating the Demon King's rage and fading existence. Enraged, the king prepared to attack. He summoned his minions, ordering them to kill his enemies. Teo, engaged in combat, offered Spirit a wager by guessing how many times he would die before reaching the 19th floor. Spirit agreed, betting on less than 100 deaths, while Teo aimed for less than 99 deaths. They agreed that since it was a wager, Spirit would provide no assistance this time, leaving him to face his own kind. He smiled and agreed. At that moment, a message appeared saying he had died and was being sent back 24 hours. In the midst of the battle, Teo stated that he urgently needed to deal with the overwhelming number of people. He asked the leader of the Black Dragon if she could, to which she replied that she was already doing her best with her wide zone skill, since she was the only one capable of doing so. Teo mentioned that he would only be able to use his skill after 3 coins, but he quickly brushed it off and turned to the Sword Saint, asking him to smash the lid of the sarcophagus-like object. While the Sword Saint fulfilled his request, he beat up a zombie and received another message that he was dead. He told the Sword Saint about the secret passage hidden under the sarcophagus. He told him that there was a hammer there that was very effective against the undead. Urging him to take out the hammer and use it, he explained that if he infused the hammer with an aura and struck the ground with it, all zombies would be destroyed in one blow. When the Sword Saint asked how he knew this, he simply declared himself a prophet. Unfortunately, Teo was bitten by a zombie again, and he received another message that he was dead. Now that the Sword Saint was holding the hammer, he admitted that they had managed to deal with the zombies to some extent with his help. Teo stated that they would now have to fight the Demon King. At that moment, a huge monster with a single eye appeared in front of them. The Sword Saint expressed his surprise, wondering about the nature of this creature. Teo explained that it was a giant-turned-zombie that had probably once been a temple protector, but had turned into a demon after being killed by a subordinate of the Demon King. He noted that they could learn more if a cult investigator was present. The Sword Saint announced his intention to face the giant, and Teo allowed him to do so. When the giant swung his weapon, he received the message that he was dead. The Sword Saint reiterated his determination to fight the giant, but Teo interrupted him, emphasizing his role as prophet. Then he turned to the Black Witch and ordered her to aim her beam at the giant's eye. With enthusiasm in her eyes, the Black Witch declared her desire to hit the giant's eye. Teo approved of her desire, and they prepared for a confrontation. The giant zombie let the laser out of his eye, and Teo received the message of his death again. Without giving up hope, he activated his skill, 100 Souls Summon. The Black Witch commented in shock at Teo's skill, which appeared to have no waiting period. He admitted that it did have a waiting period. He then explained that he needed the Sword Saint and Black Witch to fight the giant, but he cautioned them against getting in his eye, warning of dire consequences. The Black Witch questioned his decision. She pointed at the giant's massive eyeball, wondering if he had a beam attack. Would he be able to keep from getting hit in such an eye? Seeing her point, Teo agreed with her, but begged off, citing lack of time and no opportunity for further explanation. Sword Saint supported Teo's request, calling him a prophet. The Black Witch, though disappointed, reluctantly agreed to do her best to keep her eye out, and Teo expressed his gratitude. Soon, the zombie giant was defeated, and the Demon King cried out in horror, mourning the loss of his general. A report appeared that the Demon King had retreated to the 14th floor. When the Demon King left, the empty and dark temple turned into a bright atmosphere. The zombie giant that had fought them a few minutes ago was now sleeping peacefully, guarding the temple. Teo smiled and announced that it was time to continue on their way. Black Witch took Teo and the Sword Saint by the hands, using teleportation to move them. As the trio continued to fight, reports began to surface that the Demon King had decided to retreat. They fought through forests, water, and fire, facing the Demon King on different floors. Teo noticed the story regressing as they pushed the Demon King back. Reports said that the Demon King was retreating, and each floor was listed as the location of his retreat. The Demon King, who had once been formidable, now looked pitiful and weakened, his existence fading away. He looked angrily at Teo and blamed him for the situation, saying that if Teo had followed the proper procedures, things would have turned out differently. He expressed disbelief that a simple swordsman from another world could have caused such chaos. Teo calmly replied, noting that he was finally able to see the Demon King's eyes, that it was a tragic case that the warriors had never met the Demon King face to face. He then pointed his sword at the Demon King and challenged him to either go at him with everything he had or run away again. Teo taunted the Demon King, asking how much weaker he would become if he decided to retreat again. He emphasized that if the Demon King didn't give his all in battle, he wouldn't stand a chance of winning. The enraged Demon King mocked his words, calling him a hyena tearing his flesh. Teo then turned to the Demon King and gave a warning. He repeated that the Demon King must rush at him with all his strength. If the Demon King couldn't, his time would become longer than the king's history. When Teo was first killed by the Demon King, he received messages notifying him of his death and the punishment for his skill taking effect. The punishment was to recreate the trauma suffered by the enemy who killed him. The level of the punishment was considered medium. Teo and the spirit arrived at a place engulfed in flames. The soldiers around them shouted that they would burn the witch's lair without mercy and called all its inhabitants cursed monsters. Amidst the raging fire stood a girl who doubted the cruelty of these people, wondering who they were to burn their own kind. In the fire was a mother and a crying child, acknowledging the stifling heat and urging him to hold out a little longer. She watched the people she had once helped leave the world. Overwhelmed with grief, she fell to her knees and painfully cried out their names. She grabbed a handful of earth and ate it, expressing her regret for their plight. She then spoke of their humanity, emphasizing that they were born human and understood the beauty of life. They even shed tears for others. But she couldn't understand how others could so easily and without hesitation classify them as monsters. As she lamented, black energy began to flow through her body, and she wondered at the unfathomable reason for humanity's lack of empathy for those they once called their own. Shrouded in black miasmas, she confronted the others, questioning their belief that they were human and her children were doomed to exist as monsters forever. It seemed to her that people only recognized humanity in others if there was evidence of it. In response, she vowed to curse them all and consume their evil intentions that were the reason for her existence. That day, resentment fell upon her like rain, and her heart groaned. When the rain ended, she declared that from that moment on, no more villages would be burned. The spirit looked at Teo lying on the ground and urged him to wake up, assuring him that this was not his hell. A series of messages appeared to indicate the completion of trauma recovery, confirming that the subject's self was intact and signaling the end of punishment. When Teo hit the Demon King cried out in pain. The spirit urged him to strike at the Demon King's exposed head. With a powerful blow, he struck the Demon King, causing him to recoil in agony. Teo noticed that the Demon King's body actually became smaller, and most of the evil substance disappeared. A message appeared that the Demon King's existence was fading. In despair, the Demon King lamented the resentment and discontent of his children, but he could not hold on. Teo commanded a retreat, ordering the Demon King to return to the 20th floor as victory was no longer possible. It was time for the Demon King to return to where he belonged, the Demon King's castle. He cursed in annoyance as he disappeared, and a message confirmed his retreat to the 20th floor. History changed, and the stage of the 19th floor was opened. Teo bowed and addressed the Sword Saint and the Black Dragon leader, expressing his desire to meet the Demon King alone on the 20th floor. He thanked them for their help and asked them to continue traveling alone. The Black Witch agreed with his decision, recognizing his significant contribution and mentioning that she was willing to wait, breaking her promise not to move for 5 days. The Sword Saint informed him that once the current day was over, the 5th would come, and if he managed to get past the 20th floor, they would meet separately to discuss various matters. Teo accepted the offer, thanking again, and then used the gear to move to the 20th floor. After his arrival, a message appeared, welcoming him as the Lord of Death and informing him that he had entered the boss stage. The message stated that he was the only challenger and wished him good luck. It also stated that the rewards from the 11th to the 19th floor would be calculated together and recognized his great achievements. Death Lord's powers were adjusted. He was given limited apostle powers, allowing him to modify all of his skills except X-class skills. Reflecting on the situation, Tio wondered about the purpose and origin of the tower, as well as the presence of other worldly organisms in it. He assumed, however, that the tower now existed to observe the choices of those in it and to remember their own decisions. Pointing his sword at the Demon King, he declared that it was time to put an end to everything. In response, the Demon King declared that the village belonged to him and warned him not to destroy their paradise. At this moment, the message that the boss stage was beginning appeared. The sky was clear without a single cloud. There would be no rain on this day. The Demon King, overwhelmed with anger, screamed at him, expressing his refusal to forgive. The burns inflicted on him and the memories associated with them were still fresh in his eyes and mind. He asked about his intentions, if he wanted to wipe out the atrocities of those who wanted to harm his paradise. The Demon King remembered the tires and the sinister plans they represented. Teo, immersed in thought, considered this world as the smallest stage where the most vicious boss monster dwells. The Demon King rushed at him while swinging his sword and launched an attack. However, Teo effortlessly blocked the sword strike and reminded the Demon King of their past roles. On the 12th floor, the Demon King was the invader, and Teo stood as the warrior who stopped his advance. By pushing him away, the Demon King recognized the strangeness of this world, for now their positions had reversed, with the Death King defending himself against the Demon King's attack. With a battle cry, the Demon King attacked once more. Teo quickly chopped down the Demon King and dismissed his words as meaningless. The Demon King screamed in pain, and a message appeared, indicating that the Demon King's existence was fading. Unable to calm down, Teo struck the Demon King again, insisting that he should become even weaker than he was now. Another message appeared, indicating the Demon King's shrinking existence. As he continued to deliver powerful blows, Teo emphasized further weakening the Demon King's presence. With each blow, the black miasma peeled off the Demon King's body, causing him to cry out in anguish. As the black miasmas began to dissipate, the girl screamed in protest, begging the tower to prevent this outcome. Teo spoke with cold determination, recognizing that she had weakened enough. She, gripped by fear, begged Teo to stay away from her and not come any closer. Undeterred, Teo challenged the girl to stop him, by power, sword, or any other available means. He warned that if she failed, he would strike her down. The girl, overwhelmed with anger and grief, expressed her outrage at the atrocities committed against her children. She asked how they could have done this to her. Teo responded by reminding her that she herself had claimed to be a stranger from another world. He emphasized that everyone in that world, including the Alliance, the Temple, the King, and even the Queen had joined forces and burned down her village. According to Teo, there was no one on the continent who was free from guilt. However, he stated that hunters like them, who came from another world, were free from that guilt. He argued that she had no right to hold him accountable for the actions of others and that she did not have the strength to stand up to him. In a trembling voice, she denied her intent to do harm. She insisted that her only desire was to heal the sick. Teo accused her of devouring the precious child entrusted to her and then bragging that she had saved him to deceive others. She struggled to choose her words and tried to defend herself. She claimed that she had no memories of being human and lacked knowledge. She insisted that she didn't know the consequences of her actions at the time. Unable to bear it, Teo pointed out that she'd hidden the truth from others by assuming the identity she'd absorbed as a child. He claimed that she had chosen to remain silent for fear of being treated like a monster. She admitted in a desperate plea that she did not know, emphasizing her lack of understanding at the time. She expressed regret, stating that she would not have killed the child if she had known. Teo drew a parallel, suggesting that people who committed atrocities might have used the same excuse. He wondered if all people were the same, pointing to soldiers who were simply following orders and commoners forced to evacuate. He wondered if there were people like her among them, could claim they didn't know what was going on. Teo stood in front of her and apologized, admitting his own lack of knowledge and ignorance. He mentioned that the only form of justice he believed in was karma. He asked her if she considered those whom she had banished, absorbing them into her shadow, to be human beings. He suggested that she herself should suffer the same fate so that justice would prevail. In response, he called out to the tower, summoning an apparent reward that allowed him to change one of his skills as he wished. A message appeared, confirming that the tower had acknowledged his request, but informed him that unreasonable changes were not possible. He explained that he wanted to change the skill of summoning 100 souls, specifically the aspect that memories could not be inherited. He wanted the summoned soul to be able to retain memories of its previous life at will. Teo explained to the tower that his request was reasonable, emphasizing that he was not asking to preserve the abilities of the dead or reduce their time of effect. He only wishes to inherit the memories. A message appeared with a calculation of his request level, and the tower recognized his reasonableness. The skill was called Reincarnation of 100 Souls and was of SSS rank. It allowed the people he killed to be summoned as monsters. The dead could not inherit skills from their previous lives, but their memories and appearance while alive could be retained if Teo wished. This skill could be used once a week. Thinking deeply, Teo recognized that this was his first SSS class skill, signifying a significant advancement. Teo, closing the skill window, informed her that he was going to kill her. He drew a parallel between the way he was devouring her and what she had done to the child and the sick. He expressed his satisfaction that she had become human, because if she had remained a monster, she wouldn't have been able to get the Reincarnation of 100 Souls skill. She lunged at Teo with her sword, but he easily dodged her attacks. Breathing heavily, she gathered her strength and lunged at him again. Teo remembered Spirit's advice about the importance of mastering the basics and relying on his hands and feet in the last moments of life. Teo attacked, successfully slicing her sword in half. She fell to her knees and screamed in despair. In his thoughts, he recalled the Demon King's words, "One who gathers death," and realized the accuracy of that description. As Teo prepared to swing his sword at her again, the spirit interrupted him. He apologized wryly for interrupting, but insisted that Teo refrain from killing and wait a moment. Annoyed, Teo inquired about Spirit's motives. Spirit explained that now that she was no longer a monster, they couldn't be sure that she was truly human. He suggested that she could have been an ordinary soldier. Teo hesitated, pondering the plausibility of Spirit's argument. The Spirit advised Teo to gather his thoughts and emphasized that the tower was strict about such matters. He warned that if Teo killed her without thinking of the consequences, and the tower later revealed that she had been a soldier, he would be held accountable. At a loss for words, Teo was unable to answer. The Spirit continued to argue his point. He asked Teo to look at his skill card, which indicated people you've killed. Teo grumbled, claiming that a soldier was still a human. Spirit challenged his belief, stating that it was just Teo's own perception. Seeking clarification, Teo turned to the tower, asking if the skill Reincarnation of 100 Souls applied to dead soldiers or only to hunters like himself. However, the tower was unable to answer and stated that this matter was not within its purview. Another message appeared, confirming the Death Lord's authority and recognizing his question as an official topic. Another message stating that the tower was requesting a meeting to decide by a majority of the 6 pillars of life.